Hey, it's Paolo from Trivium, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 438 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week we've got another great one because Paolo Gregoletto, the bass player of Trivium, is here on the podcast for the first time. Never had a member of Trivium on here in the past, so super excited to get this one out here with Paolo. This is a great talk about their new EP, Struck Dead, that comes out on Halloween. So next week you can grab this EP. There's already a couple singles out, and actually one single out. The other one should be out around that date, I believe he said, which is the title track, which is I'll talk about in the interview with Paolo. That's one of my favorite songs I've heard in 2025. So you definitely need to check this out. It's only 3 tracks, but that's 3 more tracks than you had last week, right? I guess that's the way to look at it. And they're working on a brand new album, so it's kind of a good thing to hold you over if you're a Trivium fan. And if you're a Trivium fan and this is why you showed up here and this is your first time, I really appreciate it. As you could see right there in the title of this episode, there would be 437 episodes previous to this for you to check out. So I appreciate you being here. And of course, as always, if you've listened many times in the past, I greatly appreciate you making your way back. But before we get into this interview, need to let you know who sponsors this podcast. DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based in the Tulsa area who has continually brought great concerts to Tulsa, and they've also booked the DEB concert stage at Rocklahoma for the last several years as well. They booked the pre-party at Rocklahoma, and like I said, they booked shows in downtown Tulsa throughout the years. They've been doing this for a long time now. Tons of great acts. This year at Rocklahoma featured Orianthi, Van Halen, Sebastian Bach, Lita Ford, Mike Tramp, Snakebite Whiskey, Dime Store Riot. So many other great ones on this stage. And Doug and DEB Concerts continues to bring great music to the Oklahoma area. So hit up debconcerts.com. Follow them on the socials so you don't miss upcoming info. And here at Thunder Underground, of course, I'll let you know every time a concert's coming as well. We've also got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. They're state licensed, they're Native American owned, and they have a female artist on staff full time. 30 plus years of experience from Jake and his crew over there at Sunset Tattoo. I've had work done by Jake more than once. I'm super happy with everything that he's done for me, and I know many other people that have had work done at Sunset Tattoo. That also includes many artists from some bands you love. I promise you that, because Jake has tattooed a lot of rock and metal artists throughout the years as well. So hit up Sunset Tattoo on their socials. It's Sunset Tattoo Tulsa on both Facebook and Instagram. There's tons of photos on there so you can see all their work, see what they specialize in. If you've got an idea that you need help bringing to life, they can obviously help you with that. Send them a message, give them a call to set up a consultation time. They also accept walk-ins. They have specials running all the time, so follow them on those socials so you don't miss that, and let them know you heard about them right here on Thunder Underground. All right, like I mentioned, Trivium has this brand new EP that's coming out. We're going to talk a bit about that. And of course, we're going to talk about the change in drummers that was recently announced. And a side note on that is I put out a clip from this episode, a reel, last week, right after we had recorded it, where he was talking about the departure of Alex Bent and the arrival of Grayson. And it made some news on Blabbermouth. So if that's what brought you here as well, of course, thank you for showing up. But no, check that out. That reel's on the social media, like tons of other reels. Very recently, there's been several reels about the man, the myth, the legend, Ace Frehley. I'm not going to go into too deep here because I'm going to do something else Ace Frehley centric, to lay tribute to him. But of course, by now, if you're a fan of rock music, if you're a big enough fan to listen to a podcast like this about rock and roll and heavy metal, then surely you've heard by now that we lost Ace Frehley this past week. Unfortunately, it cannot be understated in the least of how important this man is to the history of rock and roll. Anytime someone dies, you can talk about their accolades, talk about what they did, but there's a small list of people who are in this upper echelon of how important they were. And if you don't agree with that, you need to fucking recheck, what you think history is. If you're one of those people that, because I always see it, there's a huge contingency of people that rip on Kiss. And that's fine. You don't like a band, you don't have to. And a lot of times I get it, it falls into the outside of the music thing when it comes to something Gene said, or, the whole thing between the original members with Ace and Peter, and then on the other side, Gene and Paul, and all that. But when it comes down to the importance of this band, and Ace Frehley specifically, I believe, it cannot be understated. There's very few people in the history of rock and roll. I mean, in my opinion, you narrow it down to the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, Kiss, and Black Sabbath. I mean, that's kind of like when it comes to just extreme importance. Not just, being someone who was great and put out great stuff, but extreme importance and throughout what they did. And what Ace Frehley did was he inspired a shitload of musicians to start playing guitar. And even if you're not a fan of Kiss, or you're younger and you're listening to this, I guarantee you that a good majority, if you listen to rock music, a good majority of your favorite bands were inspired by Ace and Kiss. So it's a major loss. Again, big ups to Ace. I hope you've been rocking out some of that Ace Kiss classics. He wrote Shock Me. He wrote Parasite. He sings on both those. And more importantly, I know he wrote Kiss's, what I believe is that it's Kiss's greatest song, is what I was trying to say, which is Cold Gin. He didn't sing on that. He actually, I believe the old story went that Gene was trying to talk him into singing it, but Ace was still not comfortable yet that early on singing, so that's why Gene took the vocals on that. And then, of course, there's the Ace solo album from the late 70s. He had classic solo music after he left Kiss. Songs like Rock Soldiers, New York Groove, Rip It Out. Well, that's from the album while he's still in Kiss. But all this great stuff between Ace Frehley's solo, Frehley's Comet, and of course Kiss. There's so much out there for you to dive into. Show the rock and roll gods some love, and rock out some of this music this week. All right, back to the subject at hand. Like I said, I got to sit down with Paolo Gregoletto for a little bit here this past week to talk about Trivium's new music, the change from Alex Bent to Grayson. That's an interesting thing. You see a lot of different, talk online about, Trivium and the fact that, they've had turnover in drummers. But while they've had turnover in drummers, it was kind of just that middle period, I think. Because like he points out in this interview, Alex was there for like 9 years. And I believe that, their original drummer, Travis, was the same, like 9 or 10 years. And in between them, there was 2 or 3 other guys. But it's not something like Spinal Tap here, which I've seen that joke a few times. But with the musicianship that is required in a band like this, you have to have great drummers, and Alex Bent is a very, very good drummer. And I was, as a fan of him, while he was in Battlecross previous to Trivium, I was super excited to see him get this opportunity. And, he left on good terms, apparently, on his own accord. So I'm hoping that, that's because he's got something bigger, for him personally coming along. And, I'm sure we'll see about that in due time as it comes. But the man who's taking his spot currently is currently the drummer for Sepultura. Previous to that, he was with Suicidal Tendencies for a bit, and he's pretty young. He's in his early 20s, and he's already making this much noise with bands this great. I just named off 3 bands that, throughout the history of metal, have had impacts between Suicidal, Sepultura, and Trivium. And this man's already been a part of 3 bands, so it'll be exciting to see where Grayson's career leads to in the coming years and decades down the line, because I feel like this is going to be a guy that we see and hear a lot from throughout the next couple decades for sure. But yeah, with all that being said, let's jump into this. Here's Paolo Gregoletto of Trivium. Was the decision to put out an EP something to just get something new out there while you look forward to a new album, or is it like EPs and singles the new approach for you guys now?
No, no, no. The first thing you said was kind of it. It was like, before we started our tour earlier this year with Bullet for My Valentine, we built a studio in our little hangar space, and we decided we were going to do a song, try to get it out for the tour. We ended up getting three songs done as we were like kind of in on a roll, and then we thought it was going to be maybe the start of the next record. And then as we were kind of touring, we kind of felt like these kind of feel like a really good, uh, you know, companion to each other, and that it would feel better to start fresh for something new. And so we kind of held off on the single, and then we kind of shifted to, yeah, let's do an EP. And then for this last leg of our cycle this year, let's kind of drop the EP, kind of celebrating Ascendancy's 20th anniversary, celebrating new music in the future.
Like you just mentioned, kind of keeping these songs together because of the feel of them, like they're good
Yeah.
companions. Is that something you guys have done throughout, your history with the band? Just write everything like in the moment, or you don't hang on to songs for years or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Well, we actually do kind of go back to stuff, but it's usually like not full songs. It's more of like, hey, remember that riff you wrote like 15 years ago that
Right.
was really cool? We just never had never found a place on a record. Like, we'll do that sometimes. You never know where it goes. So, like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I don't know. I think there's not like an expiration on good ideas. Just sometimes they don't fit with what you're trying to do at the moment. And rather than like forcing it, sometimes it's better to just leave it there. And you know, we've been writing, for the next record quite consistently. So it's like a bit of both. It's like you look at what you still got left in the demo files, the riff files, and then you just see what you kind of do on the spot. And that's usually been our best way of going about it. And I think the Struck Dead EP was like a, build the studio and the songs will come sort of situation. And we're very proud of it. It's a very ended up being a little more like proggy in some aspects, a little heavier. I guess we were rehearsing Ascendancy, so it kind of rubbed off on it a little bit in terms of the heavy side of it. But I think fans are going to be very pleased, and it's kind of cool to have something that's a little more short form than what we're used to. Gives us a little bit of a break and gives us some time to really consider what we want the next record to be.
Like you mentioned, the single "Bury Me with My Screams" is out.
Mhm.
Are you happy with the response? Have you guys played that live, like at Aftershock or anything, any of the shows previous to that?
Yeah, we played it a couple times. We did it over when we were in Europe, and the response has been great. It's we hadn't put out new music in I think maybe 4 years, which I'm like, I can't believe the time is flown by like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was great to drop something, and especially like after having been in like nostalgia mode for so much, I think it was a nice like kind of palate cleanser for us to kind of get back to like obviously putting a new song out, but even just playing other songs from like the back catalog. It was like a very nice break after like, okay, we have to play the record start to finish. You have to do it in order. It was really fun, but it's like it's kind of constricting too on a set because you're like, okay, I wouldn't put a set like this in this order for what we did for the record, but for this, it was really nice to kind of just like, hey, here's a new tune, and Halloween, we got two more coming for you.
You've mentioned, building the studio and everything, and that's, evident in the video. Is that actual footage? Are you guys setting it up, or was that kind of a stage thing?
No, no, some of the stuff with like the setup was the actual stuff, and I actually got quite a bit more of it. Because like it was funny, doing this whole EP has kind of been we've kind of been experimenting a little bit of like kind of test run for like stuff we want to try for the next record, in terms of rollout and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of fun to just be like, okay, we're gonna try some different things. Like originally, Bury Me wasn't gonna even have a video, so we kind of made this like sort of hybrid of a lyric video, music video, kind of playthrough type thing. And then Struck Dead has like a little bit more of a proper video. But, the stuff you're seeing there is like our space where we record, where we rehearse. And some of the footage was the actual, like, the final stages of the building and some of the setup, the framing and all that kind of stuff. It's I made sure to get a good amount of footage of that as it was going on, but it was, a couple months of construction. It was a real elaborate project.
Were these three songs the first thing you guys recorded in that space?
Yes, first
Okay.
things.
Kind of like you mentioned, 4 years of time. Like you guys traditionally, historically, haven't waited that long between releases.
Yeah.
Is it put more pressure on you at all whenever you
Um,
think about that, or do you even think about that?
Not as much. I think putting out the EP before we have to really dive into the new record was kind of nice because it's like kind of holds people over for the full album. And because these aren't on the album, I don't feel like we're trying to like Frankenstein other songs to them. Like they're kind of their own thing. And it's like a clean slate again. And it'll be nice to get back in the studio and record something new after after having done the EP, because like the EP was kind of like the test run. It was like, okay, we built it, we put all the gear in, it works. Okay, let's do the EP, see how it goes. Just kind of just like feeling out the whole process. Rather than doing like maybe like a couple cover songs or something, we did just original music as our test run of it.
Well, you mentioned the video for Struck Dead, so you guys are going to release that as a single as well.
Yeah, that'll be coming out. I believe I want to say it's going to come out the day of the release, but I could be wrong. Maybe it'll come out a little earlier. But so far, I think that was the original plan. And I don't know, for the other song, Six Walls, which is kind of the long one of the EP. I don't know if we're gonna do a music video for that, but I guess the cool thing is that I feel like being three songs, it's about 17 minutes of music. It's like I feel like for most people now, obviously attention spans have gotten shorter, and
Yeah.
people generally like to, I think, throw on a playlist and kind of let things go. But being an EP, I think it's a pretty easy listen. Especially if you're into what we do, to just kind of sit and, these are the next three songs you're gonna have for a bit.
Personally, I've got to say, "Struck Dead," the title track, probably my favorite song I've heard of 2025.
Well,
I mean,
I'm glad to hear that.
this song, you guys have always been great about combining elements, but this song, like, really, I feel like stands out the way that the verses, have that real
Hmm.
metalcore vibe into
Yeah,
the
it
very
was
melodic chorus into a thrash metal,
yeah,
guitar solo, and then groove metal riffs after that.
I would
Just kind
say
of talk a
that's
little bit
like
about.
yeah, it's I feel like for us, like, to me that's the song where we're like, okay, we're gonna pull back a little bit. We're not gonna like throw the kitchen sink at the song kind of thing. And it's funny because I'm like, I think that's the hardest thing for us as a band, is like to know like, oh, you don't always need another riff for this part or that. Like you can kind of, I don't know. It's like we always have this discussion, but I think it ended up being probably my favorite of the EP, because we did try to kind of like, not go too crazy with like riff, 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 riff. But it's like it definitely still has that element of like, you know, Trivium, Shogun in waves, where it's like, okay, we got another cool riff coming up here for you. And but I do love how it flows, and I do love that it's probably one of our most grooving kind of things. I definitely love to play fast music, but it's just nice. Like when we first started kind of settling into what it was going to be, it just felt like, it just feels heavy. And um, I think lyrically, this is a very personal group of songs for Matt. On the last tour, he kind of talked about it a little bit on stage, about just kind of having a bit of a rough year, kind of having to deal with some stuff. And I feel like he kind of was able to channel a lot of that into the EP. That's also why I think we wanted this EP to be its own thing, because we kind of had an idea for the next record, and it was like, I don't know if that's fitting with what we're thinking for the next thing. So very personal, and I think some of Matt's best stuff, in our catalog, like when he's written, is like really been from his own perspective. Especially Ascendancy was like really just a lot of stuff that he was thinking at the time. And it's kind of like, fast forward 20 years, it's like, I guess it's great that we still have this outlet that we could put that stuff onto, recording and kind of like let it out. I think that's always much healthier than just keeping things in. But yeah, it's like a heavy EP, and I think lyrically pretty heavy, just because it's Matt's true emotions in it.
A song like Struck Dead, or any of your songs for the most part, where it, like you said, has different riffs coming in and out like that. Like how is the how do you craft a song like that? Is it like crafted in sections and then put together, or do you like just to kind of think of like as it's going, adding, those
It's
changes, or how does that work?
like usually the hardest part is kind of getting the start going. Like, okay, sometimes you might have a really cool riff and that makes it a lot easier. I feel like you can kind of, if you have the cool part, you can kind of just start and things start to develop because everything we write in the room. Like, we don't do, you know, everyone doing their own demos, which we did do in the past a little bit. And I feel like we've moved back away from that. We kind of go back to how we started, which is writing in the room. And, you bring in some risk, bring in some ideas, but like it really is like what's happening in the moment is kind of how it develops. And then you come back a day or two later with fresh ears and you start to like tighten it up. You start to think, hey, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? And it keeps just developing over and over. I mean, I have probably like I don't know, 10 versions of like Bury Me or Struck Dead from like the past summer because it was, or not this past summer, but the summer before when we were writing it. Because it's like you come in every couple days and you start thinking of some cool tweaks. And you're like, you're just trying to like tighten the ideas up. So you hear it go from what the original thing is to what it's leading towards. And then, of course, the final. And I think it's just much, much easier. It's so much faster to write like that. And you kind of have to remember things even though we record the demos. I feel like you have to really think about it and you're not looking at a screen as you're writing. You're watching your instrument and you're watching everyone else in the room, and that sort of feels the best.
So is that something you guys got away from for a bit? Like you said, the writing process probably changed a lot throughout 20 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a point, I feel like after Travis left the band, um you know Matt and Corey kind of had to think a lot about more about drumming within the songs at first, and I think it just be kind of became a thing where we would demo stuff so fully on our own, and then we would bring it in and then have to almost like deconstruct it to try to jam it fresh, if that makes sense. And it was like I kind of felt like we were just adding extra steps that just felt like it took a lot more time to get to where we wanted the songs to be. You also become more accustomed and set on what a song sounds like when you've written it and you have a demo of it. You're like, well, actually, I kind of like the way I did it. And then I think it's just so much easier to be like, hey, I like this riff. What do you got to go with it? Or how do you think this should go? It's just, there's a lot less emotion tied to things when it's like really open and sort of like a new idea versus you had a demo, you've lived with it, you maybe program drums, and we got away from that. And it was good to kind of like take a step back from doing that stuff and really just get back in the room. So much easier. It's so much easier. And it's like we can record so easily in our space now, whether we want to do it. You know, I have my laptop set up upstairs to record right off our monitor board, or we can just send it right down to our studio, with the big Pro Tools rig and all that fancy stuff. It's like now we don't need to worry about that. And I'm like, I don't want to sit there playing with drum machines. It's not fun.
As far as you personally, like when
Mhm.
it comes to writing, like how is that? I mean, a lot can change, in your mindset from the age of 20 to the age of 40. Where do you draw inspiration or the way you approach things any different than you did when you were starting out, 20 plus years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like personally, having worked with so many great producers and different people over the years, you just sort of like start to pick up cool ideas. You start to learn how to like write things with a different perspective of like thinking about like say vocals in a certain way, or even just kind of like doing my own like sort of research into things like how do you write lyrics better? How do you like what is the process of lyric writing? How do you break it down? Like reading books or watching YouTube videos, like those kind of like little things. And then of course, the ultimate is just listening to music, staying, current with like what's coming out. Of course, I'll listen to a lot of older stuff that I love, but to me, it's always about exploring new and old, trying to find new things that maybe will loosen up some sort of idea in your mind. You'd be like, hey, I kind of like the tempo of this song. I'm like, I'd like to write something in this tempo. And it can be as simple as that. And I think maybe as I've gotten older, I feel like I've gotten more creative and I want to be more open to trying things. I guess it's been the opposite of how you think. Like maybe you get older and you're kind of more set in your ways. And I feel like the opposite. And I think building a studio is kind of like a real physical extension of that. It's like this is our laboratory. We built it, and we don't need to rent the space. We're not paying for the time to be in here. It's like full on 24/7. Whenever we want to get in there, we can.
Like you mentioned, just paying attention to what's going on, like new as well. Playing something like Louder Than Life or Aftershock or any, European festivals.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're seeing a lot of, your peers that you've known throughout the years, but are you also like the day you're playing, do you ever get a chance to like discover new stuff that kind of,
Yeah, it kind of depends on the setup of the festival. Like Aftershock is such a massive festival site. It takes like, a certain amount of time to like even get a van to a stage. So
yeah,
it can be a little tricky. If we're very busy with press and like with Aftershock, we basically kind of showed up, a couple hours before we played, and we kind of had a pretty full schedule leading up to it. So it was like tough to see a bunch of new stuff. We were very busy that day, but sometimes we do. Sometimes, if we drove in on a bus or something and it's like we got like 8, 9 hours to kill, yeah, it's like cool to like pop out and go see some new stuff if you can.
one thing that jumped out to me about the Struck Dead EP, kind of visually is the artwork because it
Hmm.
seems, it stands, among itself throughout the Trivium history. Like, was that an
Hmm.
obvious
Yeah.
intent to like make it, bright colors and just kind of set itself off different, or where did that idea come from?
Yeah. So I think when we were like, we started kind of having an initial idea for what it was going to be. And then, so Matt's wife, she's a graphic designer. So we've kind of had a little bit of we got an unfair advantage, I feel like, within the Trivium family, having a graphic designer who can be like, that's cool, but like, here are some other cool ideas and options. And she actually is really a great resource for like finding artists through her work. And so she found this really great artist. I think he's here in Orlando. His name is Boy Kong. That's like his artist name. And really does crazy, incredible stuff. Like, obviously, like the stuff he did for us, but he does even more elaborate stuff in like museum installations and things like that. So, we've had the privilege of working with really incredible artists throughout our career, and we realize, the importance of someone putting their time and effort and like their talent, into representing like the actual thing you're seeing, and how it represents us. And, that's always been very, very important since day one. And, we like really wanted to kind of just step away from dark colors, another record with like skulls on the front, which, we're guilty of that. We love our skulls
Yeah.
and dark records, but like, just to kind of change it up. And even the last record was kind of like it's really vibrant oil painting, which we have hung up in the hangar, the actual thing. It's, just trying new and different stuff. And like we're already thinking what we want the next record to be. And, hey, we want to shift this way. And it's just fun because that aspect of it really shifts into like what you're going to do on the live show, what you're going to do for merch. But with this one, it was like, yeah, this is a fun EP. Let's have fun with it. Let's get some color in the mix. Let's do some different things. And of course, it's like sort of like has certain aesthetics of stuff we've had before, like having a lot of the Japanese imagery
Right.
in our like merch in some of our albums. But his art, the way he does stuff, is like a very specific look, and we're just really happy how it came out. It's just really fun and colorful. And I actually haven't seen any of the actual merch in person yet, so I'm like excited to actually get it and actually get the record because I think it's probably one of our coolest vinyls ever. Very, very happy with how it came out.
Well, you mentioned drumming earlier, so there's an obvious subject we got to bring up.
Yes.
Alex, feels like someone that would be hard to replace, but you guys obviously found someone that can very well handle this. But before we talk about Grayson, like, what are you going to miss most
Yeah.
about playing with Alex Bent?
Well, like this past weekend at Aftershock, it was like I feel like for me personally, it's like obviously I had a lot of mixed emotions. I think, which I don't know, feels normal because it's like if you've played with someone for a long time, but also like there's like a whole other element too where it's like, basically he had kids at the almost exact same time I had kids, and it's kind of like, a lot of that side of it linked up. So it's like, yeah, there's just like so much to it. And I think anyone that's ever seen any of our like social media knows that like we are a close band, we hang out. Um, that's like part of it. So it's like, yeah, to like look back and not see him there, that was like a kind of weird, but also, we have a great drummer that's filling in for the show and for the tour. And it's like, it was exciting. It was a great show. So it's like everything all in one is like, wow, that's crazy. I'm like, it's like a, sad, but also like, I'm also happy still doing what we're doing. So it's like, I don't know. It's gonna be one of those things where I'm like, I'll probably kind of have like that feeling for a while. Um, but like, it was really important for us to like let Alex make the first statement because that's not something we've always done in the past. And I felt like, it'd be nice for fans to kind of hear it right from him and to like not put words into his mouth ourselves and just to kind of like let him make the statement and then 24 hours right as we're going on stage to say, hey, Grayson from Sepultura stepping in for this show. He's stepping in for the tour. He's helping us out big time. And, just looking forward to dropping the EP, doing the tour, and then, of course, the record. That's like kind of full steam ahead. So, but it is important, I think, for all of us, we kind of like just thinking about everything. And also for fans, I'm like, I don't feel like I want fans to be like, um, hey, okay, we're over it. We expect you to be over it, kind of thing. I'm like, no, I'm like, we made a lot of great music, and there's a lot of history between us. He was almost in the band as long as Travis was, and almost made as many albums, I believe. So it's like, you know, that's a pretty big chunk of our history right there. And I mean, I think Sin in the Sentence of the stuff we all did together is maybe one of my favorite records we've done. And I think the EP too is like, if that's the end of the chapter, I'm like, that's a great ending right there. Cause I think it's a very, very cool EP. And, I can say without a doubt, I feel that the albums and EP has been an incredible run. I don't feel we had like a real weak point. I can't say that's something I feel like for our whole career. So I'm like, I feel very proud of that. It was a lot of effort and work on everyone's part.
You mentioned temporary, and I know Grayson is still in Sepultura. Like they announced that
Mhm.
as well. Like,
Yeah.
is the idea for him to be on the next album, or is that something that's not
Oh, I
being
don't know
thought about
yet.
yet? Or
Yeah, it's kind of one of those like, we're still kind of like thinking like the tour first. It's like I have to almost kind of try to put everything in order of how it's coming just to not get too far ahead of ourselves. We do have like some writing coming up that we had planned anyway, but he's not involved in that. It's really like it's the three of us and Josh Wilbur, our producer, kind of brainstorming because we've been doing a lot of stuff. We have quite a bit of material. It's like we want to get a little head start before we get to the new year and start really diving into actually doing it. Um, but as for like who's playing on it, we're really don't know. And honestly, Grayson has commitments with Sepultura next year, so like even if he were to help us on, let's say, the record or a couple shows, like he's got that stuff. So I'm like, we're gonna have to still probably jam with some people early next year, figure some stuff out, and we're just kind of taking the moment to take things easy. That's and take it slow. We've in the past have had to make quick judgment calls like in pressure, and I feel like that's never been the best idea. It's better to just
yeah.
take a breather, let everyone kind of just deal with the news that we just dropped on them first. And then, of course, like, let's have fun on the tour. We were talking to him about the set list. We're giving him a little bit of some freedom to pick some songs of like, hey, here's like a list of tunes we like, we love to play. Check them out, see what you're feeling, and kind of just go from there.
I mean, you've mentioned working on this next album and next year. I mean, I guess I'd be dumb to not ask. Do you have a timetable, or is it just kind of a ongoing thing until it happens type thing?
Um, I mean, probably for our manager and label it would be end of next year, but
Okay.
for us, it's like um, if it's not ready, it's not ready. But we're like really having the studio and just the amount of time we could put into it. I think that's not impossible, and I just want to make sure it's all like really up to the standard of like what we've done. But it's important for all of us to like push into new territory if possible, like it's sonics and everything. Like, how can we make it sound bigger? How can we add in elements we've never had before? I think we kind of dabbled a little bit on the EP with some of the Japanese instruments, but not really in the songs as much. And it's something would love to like take the time to kind of see like, is there a way we can incorporate certain things where it sounds really like a cool texture to the song? So like that's like the stuff that I feel like is just going to take time, and it's one of those like, if we get a wild idea, I'd like to try it first, take the time to see if like I'm feeling it, 2 weeks from now. Um, but yeah, however long it takes, we're gonna make sure it's a great album.
Well, final question for you. I've been, asking everybody I've talked to since its significance about the loss of Ozzy. I know that
Hmm.
I know that you're a fan, the band's fans, but like, you specifically growing up in the getting into music in the probably the mid to late '90s. Like, when did Ozzy like come onto your radar, and when did you become a fan?
I mean, of course, listening to like rock stations, classic rock. Of course, you hear, the ones that they always played, Crazy Train, all that kind of stuff. Like it's like he was kind of always there. I remember seeing in the CD stores, like going into Sam Ash or Sam Goody, excuse me, and seeing like Osmosis, all that kind of stuff on the wall, and like he was just a guy that was like, I don't know, just kind of always was there. And it's like as you're getting into it, it's like Black Sabbath and Ozzy were always referenced by other bands. So it's like you kind of like as you get into it, it's like you're sort of brought up to speed of like, hey, this is where it started. And I think just more and more over time, you just really, at least for me, I've just fallen in love with like the Sabbath and Ozzy catalog so much. And when he passed, it was just like gave me a chance to really just like go back and just listen to everything and like read a bunch of books and just really kind of, I don't know, just dive into the whole story again. Even if it's stuff I know, it's like, but it is great to kind of like reminisce and go back through it and just really be in total awe of like how crazy like the whole thing of like how they develop the sound, how quickly it blows up when it does start, and just the crazy wild ride that all of them went through. And I mean, it's definitely, we wouldn't be doing this without Ozzy, without Black Sabbath. I mean, I think that's not hyperbole, and I think every single band, basically in metal and most rock bands, I think would say the same thing.
Yeah. Did you discover anything like or rediscover anything when you were doing that, diving back into it? Anything that jumped out to you that you weren't
Yeah, I mean,
necessarily like on your radar currently? Yeah.
So I had read Tony Iommi's book before. I went back, I read Mick Wall's Black Sabbath book. I just finished the Geezer book. And I mean, I do know a lot of the story, but like it is really wild to think of like how low, Sabbath got at the end of Ozzy's era, and then just what are the chances that both Ozzy and Black Sabbath would have two of the greatest metal records of all time, after that. Like, I mean, I couldn't imagine like what that would be like because obviously didn't live through it, but like to think of like, oh, a band you wrote off and they almost basically they fall apart and then it returns like a year or two later and it's like Heaven and Hell
Yeah.
and Blizzard of Oz. Like what are the, how does that happen? It just seems so crazy. Maybe they were just destined for it, but it's just such a wild ride to kind of read through and just how crazy things are and just like how is the music being made with this level of insanity.
You're
That's
right.
what that was definitely something I took from them. Like I could never imagine it, but those guys are built different, I guess.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I'm absolutely loving the Struck Dead EP, and I really
Thanks,
appreciate
man.
you taking the time with me.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
There you go, Paolo Gregoletto of Trivium. A massive thank you to Tim from Atom Splitter PR for his continued support of this podcast. And of course, a massive thank you there to Paolo for taking some time out there of his day to hit me up and talk about what Trivium has going on with this brand new Struck Dead EP that will be out next Friday. Halloween Day. Is that scary? I don't know. I don't think it's supposed to be. But it's a great 3 tracks, I can tell you that much. You can already see a video we talked about right there, Bury Me With My Screams. Check out that song everywhere that you hear or listen to music. And pick up this thing next Friday when it comes out. And in the meantime, if you're here because you're a fan of Trivium and you're a first-timer on this podcast, I greatly appreciate it. There is 437 episodes, 10 and a half years worth of episodes previous to this one that you can check out. Episodes with guys from bands like Avatar, Battlecross, Megadeth, Testament, Whitesnake, Motley Crue, Kiss. Gene Simmons was on here one time. That's right. Bruce Kulick as well. Def Leppard, Queensryche, Guns N' Roses, Twisted Sister, Three Doors Down, Shinedown, Skillet, Saliva, Seven Dust, Corrosion and Conformity, Typo Negative. The list is massive, and the list is long. Just recently, I've had on members of Tesla, Guns N' Roses, Nonpoint, Halloween, Living Dead Girl. The list is great and long. Just last week, Billy from Biohazard was on here, and Biohazard just released their first album in 13 years called Divided We Fall. It just came out this past Friday. You need to check this out. This is a unbelievable slab of hardcore, classic, crossover, heavy metal. Whatever you want to call Biohazard sound, it's definitely that crossover where they cross, same thing that, Trivium has always been good at. But, Biohazard was a little more distinct in those specific things like hardcore. They would get into the hip-hop elements at time. They do the groove metal thing. They do the thrash metal thing. So super stoked to be able to have Billy on, so check out that recent episode. You can check out all the episodes at thethunderunderground.com. You can listen right there. You can also listen most places podcasts are heard, like Spotify, Apple Music, Google, SoundCloud, all that stuff. Just Google. Yeah, if you just Google Thunder Underground, the first thing you're going to see, likely, is the Ozzy Osbourne song. And then right after that, you should see this podcast. So wherever you're listening right now, hit like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is that will alert you when a new episode pops up. One of those episodes will be Beast Eagle. I recently recorded an episode with Kate and Austin from Beast Eagle talking about their brand new EP that comes out next month. I've also got an Ozzy Osbourne tribute episode that is coming very soon as well, that will feature members of several bands that I just listed, and it'll feature, you just heard Paolo from Trivium talking about Ozzy right there. That, of course, will be on that episode, and it'll feature several other clips from recent episodes I've done, with, like I said, members of Halloween, Tesla, Guns N' Roses, Living Dead Girl, Nonpoint, the Midnight Devils, among a few others as well, that are going to be compiled for this Ozzy Osbourne tribute episode that will be out very soon as well. And like I mentioned up front, I should have something Ace Frehley specific coming soon as well. And we've got a few other interviews that are scheduled, and of course I'll let you know about those when they happen. Also, right there on the website, thethunderunderground.com, you can see all the socials. So click on those and give me a follow. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube all have near daily content, sometimes multiple times a day. Not just, most of the stuff that I post is not centric to this podcast. I mean, not specifically pulled from this podcast. I always post, clips from each podcast episode, but the rest of the days are filled up with, old clips from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, or, a live performance that I saw, or historical facts, or just funny shit. It's all across the board. So give a follow on the socials so you can check out that stuff as well. And of course, I appreciate you taking the time to listen once again. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to DEB Concerts, Sunset Tattoo, Adam Splitter PR, and of course, Paolo Gregoletto of Trivium. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.